My name is Dulce Valencia, and welcome to Telenovelas con Dulce, a podcast where every week I invite special guests to break down the telenovelas we love, from the music to the cast to the unforgettable plot twist.
Every slap, every imbécile, every secret twin.
I have got you covered.
Bienvenidos and welcome to another episode of Telenovelas con Dulce. My name is Dulce Valencia. I am your host. Joining me again for her 5th time is my dear friend who deserves all the sopas de fideo in the world, Aranza Alexandra?
Ooh, she forgot already.
Alexandra?
Yes.
Oof, I just doubted myself. Never doubt yourself, people. Aranza Alexandra Marmolejo Ramirez.
In my head, I'm playing like...
All right,
we need a sound effects person.
Yeah, we do. We need maybe Kim.
You're like, you're not promoting her, but you just made her into your sound person.
Yeah. I am giving her a lateral promotion.
Okay.
Real talk, this is our 2nd time.
But it's not as bad because tell them, Dulce.
Y'all, so as promised, I said I was going to live stream my recording of a podcast episode on TikTok. And I did for almost 50 minutes. So everyone who tuned in to the live recording of the TikTok, thank you. It was so much fun.
I loved engaging with you guys. It was definitely like we were having a conversation. Like, it's like if you guys were in the podcast with us. But editing wise, for Dulce's sake, we're probably not going to do that again. Because, yeah, since we were talking and reading your guys' comments, it just doesn't
work. I kept going on tangents. But that being said, we loved going on live. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to record the podcast. And then we're going to go live to talk to you all about more telenovelas, get more suggestions. Y'all had really good suggestions on what you wanted to see for the podcast moving forward and what you wanted to see for my YouTube channel. So shout out to you all for joining the TikTok live. It was a lot of fun. I'm gonna see if I can post a live recording. But yeah, it was fun, but it was chaotic. All right, so before we get started and go back to breaking down the plot of Teresa, I wanted to do my comment of the week TikTok segment. Last week, I introduced a segment where I am going to be highlighting some TikTok comments. So this week, the prompt was, what makes Teresa such an iconic telenovela? And these are my comments of the week. From _Jose. Shout out to Jose, one of my TikTok friends. You're awesome. Also a winner of one of my giveaways. Jose said, Teresa is such an iconic telenovela because of the fact that there are so many alternative endings. Aranza does not like that. So she disagrees with you. I agree with you, _Jose.
I hate it. We'll get into it because we're going to have a whole episode. So I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that episode, but I'm not.
So yeah, I love it and I agree with you. And then my second comment of the week for this week's episode is from Chris Bonilla, who says, she is iconic because she is a boss and always gets what she wants whenever she wants.
Which is her downfall.
It is her downfall. So it works until it doesn't. Shout out to my TikTok comments of the week. To be featured on next week's episode, just look out for the TikTok video prompt and leave a comment. The second thing I wanted to do was leave a shout out to Cristian Noriega. Cristian Noriega is a fellow telenovela lover, listener of the podcast from Puerto Rico. We love to see it. And he also has a podcast. And that podcast is called Olvidando a Verónica. It's a telenovela that he wrote and he narrates it, and he has like 10 episodes out right now. So go check it out if you're interested in telenovelas. We talked about telenovelas and he said that he noticed that I really like villain women and that Verónica is a villain woman like Teresa and Ruby. So if you're into that sort of thing, go check out his podcast. I will be linking it up in the show notes. Lastly, before we get started on the plot, shout out to my first listener from Hong Kong. And this is a person who doesn't speak Spanish, but loves telenovelas and found the podcast. And they messaged me. They were super sweet, so shout out to them. All right, Aranza, you're ready to get started?
Yes.
All right. When we last left off, everyone was in Cancun. Teresa has just met Fernando, Luis's boyfriend, and Arturo's best friend / maybe billionaire. I don't know. He has a lot of money and it's never specified. But he's a rich playboy who is now dating Luisa, and Teresa and him meet and have a steamy moment in the beach. And so we left off, they were all in Cancun for business. And what's a business, Aranza?
Tell me why I was going to say CEO of Blanca. The business is basically this new hotel thing that they're calling Luna Turquesa, which we'll learn that Paloma is going to be a part of and is going to cause a lot of problems. There's a lot of investors, and Fernando and Arturo are some of them.
And what makes this so dramatic is that, Paloma has very quickly replaced Aida as Teresa's number one nemesis. And so Teresa cannot stand Paloma. Paloma is still very much in love with Arturo and really wants him back. And so she's gonna be a rival for Teresa.
You really think it's her number one rival?
She calls her mi peor enemiga like four times. Well, we'll get to it because something happens to Aida that kind of takes her out of the running, I think.
No, because then she ends up...
Okay, whatever. Okay, we'll get to that.
They're tied for first.
Fine, they're in tight competition with each other. But I kind of am more leaning towards Paloma.
Yeah, okay. Let's get into that.
So the way we've broken down this episode is first we're going to be talking about the events leading up to Teresa and Arturo's wedding. Then we're going to be talking about the actual wedding day. And then finally what happens after the wedding. So the days leading up to the wedding are a hot mess. As we know, both Aida and Teresa are both getting married around the same time. So they're planning their weddings kind of simultaneously.
And they're in competition with each other.
Yes. But one wedding is not going to happen.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that is Aida's wedding. Because a few days before her wedding, Paolo dies from a drug overdose. R.I.P. Paolo.
Yeah, and I don't even think we had mentioned how Teresa kind of schemed this up, but basically there's a local drug dealer in her vecindad and she pays him to go basically stalk Paolo until he got hooked to drugs. But yeah, Teresa gives him his whole schedule. She killed him. We were going back and forth on whether or not she killed him, and it's like...
Because Aranza was defending Teresa again.
Again, yeah. And then the TikTok listeners were like, she killed him indirectly. She didn't have to pull the trigger, but she set it up.
Aranza had this fishing metaphor, which I want her to say again.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was like, what do I compare this to? And it's like when people go fishing, you drop the line, the bait, the bait for the fish, you wait. And that's what Teresa did. She sent the drug dealer, and Paolo didn't have to, succumb to being sold drugs. It's like, he wasn't forced, but he took the bait and he was fished.
But I think that fish would still be living if the fisherman didn't the bait. Yeah. So yeah, Paolo, our poor fish, dies. And his last words before he dies are to Aida. And Aida is wearing her wedding dress because I think she had a wedding dress fitting.
Yeah.
And so she's having a complete nervous breakdown. And Paolo's last words to her are Teresa. And I think you explained this really well.
Yeah, so his last word was Teresa. And I think to Aida, maybe in her head, since she, thinks Teresa's out to get her, which she is, but in this case, she shouldn't
Not right
know.
now.
Yeah. She thinks that Paolo's trying to communicate to her that, she had something to do with his death. And she for sure confronts Teresa about that. But in reality, I think it's more realistic that he was just saying Teresa because she was ultimately his love, which we also want to get into. Aida, although she is a villain, also kind of deserves someone. And Paolo's kind of piece of shit because he never really loved her. And even his best friend was like, why don't you treat her better? Because he was always after Teresa no matter what. And even everything leading up to Aida and Paolo's wedding, it was very forced. The mother was gonna take away his money, and it was so... Who put the pressure for the drugs?
Teresa.
No, but the pressure.
I get, but Teresa put the drugs in his path.
Yeah.
And also she did egg him on. Anytime she would see him.
Yeah, no, yeah.
She was like, you're never gonna have me. So Paolo never loved Aida. Aida definitely deserved better because she definitely loved him. And so when he dies, Aida has a complete nervous breakdown. She throws cloro into Teresa's face, which which Teresa's like, mis ojos, mis cicatrices. Like, she's worried that it's going to tarnish her beauty.
And I remember the first time I watched this, like the very, very first time, I thought it was going to like turn into that kind of novela where it turns into like the beauty aspect of it, kind of like Ruby. But no, it takes another turn.
Her face is fine.
There's so many times I wish they would have done this, but then we wouldn't have the story, which I'll get into it. I'll pin it in my head. Hopefully I remember.
So Aida has a nervous breakdown and she runs out and everyone's trying to find her, see where she is. And Aida is at a bridge and she's trying to jump off. But before she's able to, Mariano and Aurora find her and rescue her. And so Aida is safe. Teresa is racked with guilt because...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we didn't even mention this. We mentioned this in our first recording.
Yeah, so the whole episode, they were kind of replaying the conversation that Teresa had with Paolo.
The last conversation they had together.
Yeah, which, you know, having their usual conversation, like, you're never gonna have me ever again, la 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 la. And she tells him,
voy a pedirle a Dios para que te ilumine o te elimine.
And they replay that over and over again. And of course, Teresa feels super guilty. And it kind of bites her in the butt because the drug dealer comes and blackmails her. And he keeps the paper as
aseguranza.
Yeah.
Insurance.
Yeah. I think I remember it ends up coming back and hurting her even more. But I'm not sure.
I don't, because it's almost like I'm watching this novela for the first time. Because there's so much of the plot that I don't remember.
Yeah, like the whole cheating thing.
Ooh, don't get to that yet. Okay. So, and just real fast, for my non-Spanish speakers out there, the phrase that Teresa said to Paolo is basically saying, in a very clever way, I'm gonna ask God to illuminate you or eliminate you. And God chose to eliminate him.
Yep.
So the universe is on Teresa's side. Oh, and we didn't even touch this when we tried to record earlier. So at Paolo's funeral, Arturo goes and he finds out that Paloma had his son.
But died right after giving like birth.
But he and Paloma had a baby together. And that wrecks him. And when he tells Teresa, Teresa's horrible. And she's like, pero ¿cómo? Like, tienes que hacer un ADN.
Yeah, and then when he mentions that he's already dead and it's been dead, like, she's like, oh.
Right, but we see her true colors.
Yeah.
Arturo doesn't, but we do.
And I think that's the moment also where Arturo kind of is getting more of a soft spot for Paloma, because up until this point, he was pretty much, like, turning her down. Rightfully so. But yeah, this is definitely opening up his heart.
So yeah, so keep that in mind as we keep moving forward, that Arturo now has a very soft heart for Paloma, because they always wanted to have kids. Apparently they talked about it all the time when they were together, and they could have had that, but they didn't.
And speaking of Paloma, she causes more problems because she is consistently bumping into both Mariano and Arturo's life. Arturo with the whole Luna Turquesa hotel thing that they're all venturing into, and Mariano with the whole foundation that she's investing in him to make more dispensarias.
Again, this is all happening days before the wedding. After Mariano helps Aida, they end up dating and becoming a thing. And this is where, like, I feel like everyone is dating. Like, Aurora is now also dating Martin, who's Paloma's apoderado.
Yeah.
He works for Paloma and basically can make legal decisions for her. Teresa is obviously with Arturo, but there's a moment where she sees Aida and Mariano kissing, and that wrecks her, and she's so upset. And meanwhile, she's also having all these problems with Arturo. So they keep breaking up, but their breakups last like hours, maybe a day at most. But they keep going back and forth and back and forth, and it's just not looking good for them. Like, if this is any indicator as to what their marriage is gonna be.
Yeah, and I had written down on my notes during one of their breakups, many breakups that Teresa and Arturo had. Teresa's talking to her madrina. They get to talking and they're talking about ambition. And Teresa's like, I need to have everything. Like, I was so close to having everything and like, I can't lose it. And she's being very honest, but like not too, like completely honest with her madrina. And her madrina always says, ay no, ambición con medida, o si no, like it's gonna be your ending too. Which I thought was interesting. I don't want to ramble too much on that.
And going to her madrina, because as we mentioned last week's episode, her madrina has been working her butt off making Teresa's wedding dress.
By hand.
Not only Teresa's wedding dress, but her madrina's wedding dress, everyone. And guess what Teresa does? She refuses to wear her madrina's dress and doesn't tell her until like the very last moment, because she had Arturo buy her dream wedding dress from Vera Chang. And so this breaks her madrina's heart.
But Teresa manipulates the situation because she does that so well and makes her madrina think that it wasn't her that ordered her dress and it was her intention to wear her madrina's dress all along. But that doesn't happen. Which I'm just remembering now too. During that scene where she's kind of alone and like when her madrina leaves, she's like dancing in her room with the dress, like she says, this is the last time that I have to like wear her clothes.
So Teresa is being the worst to the person I would argue she loves most right now.
Yeah, which she even admits, even after that whole dress thing, Teresa's like, oh, I'm so glad you're so understanding. Like my mom would have thrown this whole fit and this is why I wish you were my like real mom. And that's why her madrina has such a soft spot for her because she was never able to have kids and Teresa is kind of her kid.
Yeah, so Teresa's just being the worst and her worstness escalates when literally hours before the wedding. And this happens after she sees Aida and Mariano together making out. Teresa goes to see Mariano and Mariano has just gotten out of the shower. He's shirtless, he's drenched in water, he just has a towel around his waist, and Teresa walks in and she touches his chest and they start arguing in the way that they argue, where Mariano's like, you're always gonna love me, and Teresa's like, you know that I want more.
Ooh, which also Teresa always tells Paolo, like, have fun marrying someone that you don't really love, because she knows that he loves her. And here she is with Mariano, knowing damn well that he's really the one that she loves,
but she's not gonna marry him.
Yeah.
But what does she do? She sleeps with Mariano hours before her wedding to Arturo. And so they sleep together. When she's getting dressed, Mariano is like, you have to call off the wedding and everything. And Teresa's like, oh, no, I'm getting married. And then Mariano's upset because he's like, how can you do that after everything we just went through? And so they start talking and they make a plan that they're gonna run away together. Teresa's gonna go talk to Arturo, let him down, and the next day they're gonna run off together and get married. And so Teresa goes back home to Arturo's house. She packs up all her things because she's gonna spend the night at Aurora's before the wedding. And this is where Teresa's really debating things, because on the one hand, she wants all the riches and everything that Arturo can offer her, but on the other hand, she loves Mariano, and she's also seeing that he's rising up very fast, faster than she thought. And so she's really considering, she's crying the entire night, weighing her options and seeing if she's gonna marry Arturo or if she's gonna run away with Mariano. And now we're moving on to the plot of what happens on the wedding day. The next morning, Teresa wakes up and she's upset. Aurora notices it and she's like, Teresa, like, what's wrong? Do you have doubts? And Teresa's like, yes, I have doubts. And that is when Arturo's wedding present arrives.
Beep, beep.
It's a car. Teresa has been wanting a car since she was in college, and finally Arturo has given it to her. She literally sees the car.
Ooh, I just thought of this. The car is crazy because in a way that's kind of what swayed her towards Arturo, and Mariano was always called el taxista and he would always give her rides. So it's like so sad.
Uno is el taxista and the other one can give her the car.
Yeah.
Little things you don't notice
until you record things twice.
So she sees the car and her mind is made up. She's marrying Arturo. So Mariano still thinks that Teresa's gonna run away with him though. And you know what's funny? That he's chasing after her in a taxi car. So then Teresa starts putting on her dress and Aurora's like, you just told me you had doubts. And Teresa's like, yes, I had doubts because I didn't know if I wanted to get married in my Vera Chang dress or my madrina's dress because, I love her dress so much. And her madrina hears all this. So her madrina is manipulated by Teresa and she's like, ay, mi corazón, like just knowing that you wanted my dress makes everything okay. Of course you're gonna wear the Vera Chang dress. So Teresa gets dressed. She's pulling herself together and there's a really iconic scene where she pulls up her veil, looks in the mirror and says, voy a dominar mis sentimientos. Tengo que hacerlo porque entre ser y no ser, yo soy. So Teresa is making her way to the wedding, and her mom knows that something happened between her and Mariano. So she goes up to Teresa. She asks for a moment alone with Teresa, and she tells her, she's disappointed in her because she knows that she's marrying for money and for ambition. And this is where we want to talk about money. Throughout this whole thing, Doña Refugio has just been super not understanding to her daughter. Mm-hmm. She's comfortable where she is. She doesn't strive for anything better. She just wants things to stay the way they are, and she can't handle her daughter not wanting that, and her daughter actively seeking a better life.
Very well said.
And Teresa is ambitious and everything, but she wants a better life, and this is where we started talking about money.
Yes. So, again, shout out Kim. Kim and I always go back and forth, and she always brings up the survey, and I've never fact-checked the survey, so I'm just gonna say this is sourced by Kim. But apparently there was this study done where they surveyed different people with different amount of income, and apparently they capped it at around like $75,000-ish of money equaling happiness, or however you want to phrase it. Like, that was the amount of money that would translate to giving you a better life. Because, a lot of us poor people would say, like, even the TikTok commenters were saying, I can't think of something that wouldn't be solved without money. Again, Kim and I always go back and forth, and there's some truth to it. I think, more money, more problems, but I do think that with money, you can solve a lot of your problems. So does Ariana Grande. She says, what does she say? She says, no, never mind.
Oh, whoever said money can't solve your problems must have not had enough money to solve them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, Ariana? Is she in here?
Yeah. This is gonna be cut out. Whatever.
I'm not cutting it out.
Okay, anyways. So yeah, that's what we were kind of talking about with the whole money situation, because Teresa, I don't know who she admitted this to. Oh, she was actually talking to Mariano, I think, because she was telling him that, I am gonna marry him, even though, I don't really love him. But she said she can come to love. She knows that she can eventually love him.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And so money, I don't think can by itself equate happiness, but it does make life easier. Because especially during the pandemic, when so many people were losing their jobs, the people that weren't struggling were the people who had money. They became even richer. And so money means that you can go to the doctor whenever you want, that you don't have to, figure out health insurance, or, I've had random stuff happen to my body where I'm like, I should probably go to the doctor, but I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So I don't go to the hospital. And that happens to so many people where money is a reason that they can't take care of themselves, that many people die prematurely, that they can't afford medication, all these things that could save their lives. Money is a direct consequence of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I disagree. I think money can buy happiness to an extent, because
to an extent. And that's what is interesting about the study, mm-hmm. because that's what it says. It can, but to an extent.
Yeah, and in the study, if I remember Kim correctly, after you make $70,000, your happiness doesn't increase. So Kim has always strived to make $70,000, and I think to an extent, me too.
Same. We always just say, we want to be comfortable. When you were saying your whole spiel about money, I kept thinking back to how we got into stocks last year, or this year?
This year, 2 months ago.
Now the way I think after learning that is more honestly in a capitalistic view, because like you said, some people got affected by coronavirus and rich people only got richer, and that's because of the mindset. And that's how we've been thinking after coronavirus, how can people make money? Because even before coronavirus, people were already getting into deals that they knew would benefit from the coronavirus.
Yeah, it's just wild, because we saw so many stocks plummet that are now skyrocketing. Yeah. But who could afford to buy those stocks when they were super cheap? People with money.
Who had money during the coronavirus?
The 1%.
People with money.
So that's our little money spiel, and basically our conclusion is money can buy you happiness to an extent. Going back to Teresa and her wedding. So Teresa is gonna get married, but she doesn't tell Mariano. So then she arrives to the church, and Arturo has been kind of really nervous, like he couldn't sleep, because if you remember, last time he was engaged to be married, he got left at the altar. He was really scared that Teresa wasn't going to show up, but she does, and she looks beautiful and everything. And they make their way into the church, and Mariano is racing in his little taxi cab trying to get to the wedding.
As beautiful as the visuals of this wedding are, we've been kind of talking about the mess beforehand, and now there's going to be an even bigger mess at the wedding. And maybe we should get into Esperanza a little, or are we going to touch on her?
So we'll talk briefly on Esperanza. As y'all know, Esperanza is Aida's father's mistress.
And a lot has been going down with them. It was like discovered, and like now everyone knows, and she's pregnant, and
it's a whole thing that meant that Esperanza wasn't invited to the wedding. She was going to be a madrina, but then Arturo asked Teresa to uninvite her because he didn't want to cause any drama between her and Ruben. Ruben is Aida's father. But when Esperanza finds out that Mariano is going to the wedding and is trying to stop Teresa from getting married, she, along with her doctor friend, drive over to the wedding because they're trying to stop Mariano. They don't get there in time. So Mariano shows up to the wedding, and he shows up right at the moment where the priest asks Teresa, ¿aceptas a Arturo por esposo? And then all you hear is, Teresa, no puedes hacer esto. No te puedes casar con él. And everyone's looking. It's so dramatic. Aida and Genoveva are living for it. Aida literally just went to the wedding because she knew that Mariano was going to try to stop it. And so it's a mess. Teresa looks at Mariano, and then
she like walks over to him.
Her walk is so elegant, so queen-like. She walks to him. Mariano's like, you can't get married.
With his little puppy dog eyes, by the way.
And she slaps him, and that hurt me.
Yeah.
And Arturo comes and he tries to punch Mariano, but Fernando, his best friend, is holding him back. Mariano gets escorted out, and Teresa and Arturo get married.
It's just a mess. It's a messy wedding.
That's a church wedding, right? At the reception is where Esperanza shows up, because again, she didn't make it in time. And when she shows up, she runs into Ruben, and there's a whole escándalo. Long story short is now Ruben's wife knows exactly who he cheated on her with. It's a mess. It's a whole escándalo. The wedding is covered with escándalos to the extent where the photographers, it's in the tabloids the next week or whatever. Teresa's wedding is just marred by tabloids and by cheesemen, by drama, which she hates because, again, Teresa's trying to be a member of this high class. So that's the wedding. Now we're entering the plot that happens after the wedding. And I feel like the theme of this episode is just, it's messy. The whole thing, because if it was messy leading up to the wedding and the wedding date, it gets even messier. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with, so Teresa and Arturo have their honeymoon planned. They're going to go to Cancun first because romantic. They loved it the first time they were there.
Yeah, every time they have little montages of them at the beach is like, I can't skip over it because I'm like...
It's beautiful. I love the montages too. So they had their honeymoon plan was they were going to be in Cancun for a bit, and then they were going to go to Europe, and Teresa's all excited. But first, Noche de Bodas, Teresa finally sleeps with Arturo, even though she doesn't want to.
And the whole night, she's kind of like thinking of Mariano.
Yeah, she's thinking of Mariano. So Teresa's crying, but the money is good, and
the money's good. It pays well.
and she's really looking forward to her honeymoon. But guess what? Arturo has a work emergency, so the honeymoon is canceled, and they have to make their way back to Mexico immediately. And Teresa is pissed. She is angry. She yells at Arturo. They get into another fight, which, again, they're going to be having so many fights. I have no idea how they have stayed together this long. But they make their way back to Mexico, and everyone's like, oh my god, did you have problems with him? Why are you back? I thought you were at your honeymoon. And Teresa's just like, no, he had a work emergency. Throughout this whole time, Arturo has been telling Teresa that he wants kids. Teresa does not want kids. At least not with Arturo. Did you see the funny scene where...
The nightmare she had? Oh, that nightmare was so funny.
I thought that whole scene was so funny because we just see Arturo and Teresa sleeping. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, they're going to show us both of their dreams.
Yeah.
So we see Arturo's dream, and he's happy. He's holding his son, and he's so happy. We flash out, and then we flash into Teresa's dream.
Nightmare.
And she's having a nightmare. She's just staring at the baby. She's like, tienes que ser de Mariano.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But yeah, Arturo wants kids. Teresa doesn't until she discovers that Arturo's will states that his entire inheritance is going to go to any kids he has. Nothing to his wife. And so that's when Teresa's like, what? So that's when she starts changing tune a little bit and she starts realizing, okay, I'm gonna need to have kids. But she's also still playing her cards and she's taking birth control, even though she's telling Arturo that she isn't. Ruby also does this too. And it's so funny because she does it to Sebastián Rulli's character as well.
Oh, wow.
So poor guy can't catch a break. And so, Arturo and Teresa are gonna have kids, happier than ever, whatever. While this whole thing is happening, Teresa's madrina, Juana, starts dating Héctor,
which is Aurora's dad.
And so together they plan a little get-together in Cuernavaca.
And what happened in Cuernavaca did not stay in Cuernavaca.
No. But before we get to that, so they invite the kids over, and they invite the worst possible group. They have Aurora and her boyfriend Martin. They have Aida and Mariano who are dating. And finally, Teresa and Arturo. And it's just, it's icky. It's a little shady, but everyone's trying to make las paces and everyone's trying to get along. And then we discover what happened in Cuernavaca.
Mariano and Teresa slept together. Teresa basically lost her virginity to her first love. Mm-hmm. But I also, when I was watching this, I was like, of course they would twist it into this big thing. But I get it.
Well, I feel like, especially in telenovelas, the first time is always the most important thing ever. Mm-hmm. And especially in telenovelas, whoever the protagonist loses her virginity to is almost always, like I would say 98% of the time,
the love.
The person she ends up with at the end.
Which is like, come on, dog. Like, if we all married the person that we lost our virginity to, like, just think about that. Think about that. You wouldn't want that. Or maybe you would. Maybe you have a high school sweetheart. God bless you. But no, most of us no.
Careful, love. That sounds like bitterness.
Okay, whatever.
So it's a huge deal. Apparently, when Aurora was in France, Teresa and Mariano, during that 3-year time jump that we didn't see, they were going to Cuernavaca a lot.
I know.
And on one of their trips, yeah.
It's such a beautiful place, too.
Is it?
The house itself.
Oh, I thought
like
Cuernavaca.
Beautiful.
I'm like, how do you know? I'm like, you're undocumented.
Fuck you.
Girl, you can't go to Mexico. If I can't go to Mexico, you can't go to Mexico. Hello, another reminder. We're your local undocumented friends. No, but Cuernavaca is a very popular tourist attraction for Mexicans, especially Mexicans living in Mexico City. So I can only imagine how beautiful it is. But yeah, they tuvieron una noche de pasión in Cuernavaca. And Arturo finds out.
He overhears Teresa telling Aurora about it.
Again, this all happened before Teresa and Arturo were together. He doesn't know that they slept together literally hours before the wedding. But when he finds this out, because Teresa always told him, she wasn't a virgin, but she was like, I lost my virginity to my prepa boyfriend, Paolo. Now Arturo knows that that's not the truth.
And he says that's what bothered him. Arturo said that what bothered him about that wasn't the fact that she, lost her virginity to Mariano. It was the fact that she hid that from him. And the fact that she hid that from him made him think of like other things that she didn't tell him. And it makes sense now that Mariano felt all of that for Teresa because, Teresa was telling Arturo that, no, my mom just really likes him for me and that's why, we only went on a few dates, which isn't true. But I was like, But Mariano triggers him a lot and he gets really, really jealous when it comes to Mariano. And so this is why it just causes him to just leave because if he's just losing his shit when he learns about this. But who does he go to?
If y'all remember, we had a conversation in one of the first episodes we did where we were talking about how shady it was of Arturo to be friends with Ruben and cover up Ruben's cheating affairs. affairs, because in my head I was like, if Arturo is okay with covering his friend's affairs, in my head that means he can potentially cheat.
Which you were right.
I was right.
Even though we didn't remember.
We didn't remember, and I said that. I was like, I don't remember if this happens, but... So yeah, so then Arturo goes running off to Paloma and is like, Teresa lied to me. She was together with Mariano. And it's so stupid because it was before they were even together. I mean, at this point, he doesn't know that it was also when they were still together. In his head, all he knows is that Teresa was with Mariano before they were together. But he flips out, and then he cheats on Teresa, and he sleeps with Paloma. I hate this.
We hate it, but when I was watching it, I caught myself being really angry at Arturo. But if we're being fair, Teresa this entire time has been cheating on Arturo. Not to that, actually no, yeah, to that extent.
She has, absolutely. However, Arturo doesn't know this. I feel like just this whole novela is filled with cheaters. Because Mariano also cheats on Aida with Teresa.
Which novela doesn't have cheaters? Show me. I meant no cheating at all.
Oh, girl, no. Okay, my theory, and controversial, I think all men cheat.
And that's going to be interesting to talk about with the next novela we're going to do, because that's like the whole premise of it.
Yeah, I think all men cheat. And Arturo, this noble man, just cheated on his new wife. They've literally been married for maybe weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Which, when Fernando found out about... We haven't even been talking about Fernando.
No.
But when Fernando found out, Fernando flipped out. He was like, how could you do this? Teresa is one of the most gorgeous women that I know, and you guys just got married. How could you do this to her? And even Arturo's like, bro, like, I feel like I'm talking to my cuñado or something. Like, what the hell?
But to be fair, I think Fernando, the only reason he reacts like this is because he wants Teresa.
For sure.
And right now, Fernando is dating Luisa. And it's serious. There's even talks about matrimony and marriage. But he definitely has this attraction to Teresa. And so Arturo cheats. Teresa doesn't know yet, but Teresa comes looking for him after he leaves Cuernavaca because he just leaves.
He stormed out, yeah.
He doesn't tell her why. He lies to her and says it's
a work thing.
A work emergency.
Which is now a second time that's a work emergency, so now it's like even like she's not going to eat it up.
So she comes running after him, and they're really worried because they can't find him because he didn't spend the night at his house. But then he shows up, and Fernando lies for him and is like, oh, he was out with some of my friends. Arturo is saved for now. But then Paloma is all excited because she thinks that she's gonna win back Arturo. And Paloma knows Mariano and Teresa's history, and then she finds them kissing at the park. So Paloma, at this point, Arturo has, knows he messed up. So he has pushed Paloma away and is like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. But Paloma calls him, and she's getting ready to unmask Teresa. And, she's like, I have to see you. Just meet me. I promise you it's very, very important.
And that's when you think as a viewer, like, maybe Teresa. And me as a viewer, I was like, yeah, like, unmask her. Because if she would have, then Paloma probably would have ended back with Arturo. They would have had their happy ending. This would have led Teresa to getting with Mariano, maybe even Fernando. Which, I mean, ultimately, like, doesn't matter. And everyone, the end. But no. They can't unmask Teresa for who she really is yet.
And so what happens is Arturo is waiting for Paloma across a busy street. And he's sitting down. Paloma parks right across from him. And she gets out of her car, waves at him. Arturo gets up. And then we hear Paloma's little voiceover saying, I'm gonna unmask Teresa. Arturo's gonna know who she is.
I know.
She takes 2 steps. And then a car runs her over. And it's so out of nowhere.
They do her the most dirty because Paloma's she's a pretty good human being.
They just run her over. And Arturo's reaction is so funny because he's just like shocked.
Yeah. And everyone else, you see the reactions around him and her.
So she gets rushed to the hospital. And she is in a very critical condition. Teresa's at the hospital because she had an appointment with her gynecologist. And so she's like, Arturo, what are you doing here? And then she sees that Paloma's there. And then so she goes to Paloma, who is dying. And Paloma, in her dying breath, tells Teresa, Arturo was with me that night. Paloma tells Teresa, he cheated on you with me. And then she dies. R.I.P. Paloma. Our 3rd death of this series, 2nd of this episode. So the deaths are just piling up. So now Teresa knows, but she's gonna keep this card in her pocket until the moment is right. So she doesn't tell Arturo. There's a will reading for Paloma where she names Arturo her heredero, so he gets everything. And in the will, it says that it's so that he can keep the foundation going, but there's no stipulation that says that. So basically the money is his. And Teresa is very excited about this because she's like, ooh, he's even richer than I thought.
So this is finally where one of my favorite quotes is said. Nothing to do again. But this is like, again, back and forth. Aurora and Teresa are like friends, and then they're not, and then they are. And in one of the moments where they're not friends, and Teresa's being like a little bitch, Teresa finally tells Aurora, en vez de preocuparte por mí, arréglate, cámbiate ropa, tu peinado. Haz algo para que Mariano te voltee a ver.
She's so horrible to her best friend. Okay, so now Teresa knows that Arturo cheated on her with Paloma. But again, she's gonna hold her cards until the very right moment. And the right moment arrives literally like 2 days later. Maybe not even 2 days later. But she gets into another big fight with Arturo. So they get into a fight about trust because Mariano is working at Paloma's foundation, but Arturo doesn't want him working there, so he fires him. Teresa gets mad at him, and then Arturo's like, I can't trust you with him. And then Teresa says, the person who should be concerned about trust is me. And Arturo's like, what are you talking about? And she says, I know that you were with Paloma. She told me. And Arturo's face just says it all. So then Teresa's like, oh, I didn't want to believe her because I trusted you, but your face tells me the truth. And so she basically confronts him about cheating on her. And throughout the couple of episodes leading up to when she was going to play this card, she had been dropping all these lines to people around her saying how if Arturo ever cheated on her, she couldn't take it. She wouldn't be able to take it and she would leave him.
Yeah, she was planting those little... She always does that.
She's so good. And so she plants those seeds and it all blows up in this. And so she leaves Arturo upset. She ends up spending the night with Fernando, but just nothing happens. She just finds a place to crash with Fernando, who we found out if he wins his inheritance is going to be one of the richest men in Europe. And Teresa has been holding on to that for quite a bit. And so she goes to see him, spends the night with him. Fernando is definitely interested in her. He smells a blanket when she leaves. It's this whole thing. And so Teresa leaves the next morning and she goes to Arturo. And what does she say?
She wants a divorce.
Dun, dun, dun. And that is where we're going to end for this episode.
Apenas se casaron.
Literally, apenas se casaron and already Teresa wants a divorce.
They didn't even complete their honeymoon, girl.
They didn't though. It got canceled. Yeah. So that is where we're going to wrap up for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, TikTok listeners, for being there for our live. And join us again next week where we're going to talk about what happens after Teresa asks Arturo for the divorce. We're over halfway through this telenovela. I think we only have about 50 or 60 more episodes.
It's crazy. We're just over half of the novela.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. So we're over the halfway mark, and that's what matters. We're nearing I feel like this is a part where the telenovela just every drama escalates even further and everything just becomes even more intense. So stay tuned for that. We're going to see if Teresa's able to get the divorce. Can she win Mariano back? Is Arturo going to be alone forever?
Is there a fourth or fifth mysterious guy?
Will Fernando and Luisa get married, or will Fernando get together with Teresa?
Will she get pregnant? Have twins?
Will there be a secret twin? I don't... Okay, now we're just being silly. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. If you like what you're listening, leave us a review. Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook if you're into that. And yeah, I look forward to talking to all of you next week. Thank you so much, and thank you, Aranza. Bye, everyone.